Hello everybody, my name is Tucker, and welcome back to our Russian Fishing for Spin Fishing character. Today, gonna try and pike at Volkov. Looked at going over to Oldberg again, and it just didn't really seem like it was gonna be a good option. It's a cloudy day the next couple days. It is not raining there, but we'll see what happens here. I did get started about midday, so I'll probably take a break at night and then come back when the sun comes up again. But so far, it's been a little bit slow. All I've got is the small 800 gram pike you just saw. And then I did catch a small 448 gram eyed on this rod here. So do have a couple different rods, and I'll kind of go over some of the configurations as there's been some questions about that. We'll pull this fish in real quick first. Looks like a small pike. Yeah, 1.3, better than I thought it was going to be. So this rod, I've got the Corellia SPF 78M. There's a couple different ones that are very similar to that. Mainly I use that for casting distance with an HSV. And the reason I do that is it's got a test weight that aligns with using lures. Let me turn around here. So if you look at the test weight, it's 5 to 20 grams. This lure is an 8.25 or 8.4 gram lure. So I'm able to get a pretty reasonable cast out of it. I also forgot to lock that one. Then I've got the Model 1s, which are pretty standard for using the HSV. So the HSV has a 15.4 kilogram friction brake, but it has about a 31 kilogram mechanism. So that's about the maximum weight that the reel can hold on to. So if you look at the Model 1, and I'll pull it back up here in a second, it's got a pretty similar sized maximum weight capacity. That way you're more than likely be able to, we haven't really ran into a case there. Interesting. I got a little bit of spin fishing XP on that small one. But the Model 1 has a 25 kilo load capacity. So it's able to hold a little bit more than the rod can, or the reel can. And you always want your rod to be able to hold more than the reel. That way you're not going to break your rod completely. And that is possible to snap your rod. I've done it on a couple of them, just messing around on test accounts, especially the good old bamboo rod. And if you oversize things and correctly, that's what happens. So when I say oversize, if you look at this line, it's got a 10.2 kilo capacity. This rod has an 11 kilo capacity. So the first thing that is going to break, usually the way you want to do it is have your leader be the first thing that's going to break. That way all you lose is your lure, your hooks, your bait, things like that. Maybe your float if you're float fishing. Maybe your sinker if you're bottom rod fishing, depending on how you have things set up there. So you always want to have your leader be your weakest point if you're using a leader for fishing. You always want, typically I want my rod to be the strongest, my reel to be the second strongest, my line to be third, leader to be least. That way, again, if you're going to break something, you break the leader first, lose your lure, your hooks, but you don't lose your actual line or anything like that. Decent chub there, 1.555. Did I get turned around to go through the channel? I did. And then for this rod, I've got the Siberia Linear 68 medium light. So medium light gives me a 25% boost to XP, but it only allows you to use up to a 3000 size reel. So that's part of why I use this rod here. Is I had the Mosquito 2 for a long time. I've been very happy with that reel, but since the 3000 size reel, I'm able to get a little bit of boosted XP from it. Both of the HSVs, I'm pretty sure, are 6000 series, I believe. Yeah, 8,000 size. So they are much bigger than a medium light. You can get an ultralight reel, but those only allow a 1,000 or 2,000 series sized reel. The Model 1s are good for jigging and trolling, really, are the main things I use them for, because they have very high test weights. I think they're 10 to 25, maybe 10 to 50. Any pike there. Or 10 to 35. That means you can put up to 35 grams on, and the more weight you have, typically the further you can cast it. But if you go over that top number, you typically will damage and wear out your rod more quickly, and you don't want to do that. And it's pretty substantially, you're going to wear things out very quickly if you go over your max test weight. If you're under the minimum test weight, you're not able to cast out quite as far. That's why I do have that rod, is because the test weight on it is so much lower. So it's got a 5 gram versus the Model 1s that have a 10 gram. And most of the lures are under 10 grams. This one has a 3 gram, so I'm able to use the smaller spinners as well. But kind of goals for this character still are to get up to about 5,400 silver so that we can afford the professional wood carving knife so that we can make the balsa lures. I think we've got a pretty good setup here with the 2 HSVs. They will last for a while. Yes, it's always nice to have bigger reels and all of that, but right now I think my next goal should be the balsa lures, being able to make those. Today's been a bit slow in this area, unfortunately. I may actually try going through the interflu as well and see what happens. Seems like a lot of things have slowed down. Not a whole lot of good options over on VK. If you don't know what I mean by VK, if you look in my description, there is a link to a VK is basically a Russian Facebook site. It's not actually Facebook, but it's similar concept. So Facebook, Twitter, that type of thing. Social media site. And there is a Russian Fishing 4 kind of group on there. And you can use Google Chrome or Bing or whatever and translate it to English if you need to. But there's a link in the description to it. So that's where I look for a lot of things. A lot of times I'll also poke around on the Russian Fishing 4 English Discord. A lot of times I just use past knowledge as well too. Especially for spin fishing and trolling, there's only certain areas that tend to be active. I'm curious about going through these weeds. I've had some luck in the past over here, so I think I'm going to try that. Since we haven't gotten a lot of good yet. I want to get a little bit further from shore. I may go around to the outside of the island here and then cut in through the interflu. And the interflu is the area between the two islands here. Which is a very, very hot day. We were about 95 to 100 all day with 65% humidity, so it was 120 degree heat index. Just taking the dog outside, he started to sweat. But I've got a dog that was kind of bred for hunting boars in the bayous of Louisiana. So he's used to the heat and humidity. He wanted to keep going for a WALK earlier, and I wanted to go pass out because I was drenched just going around the block. And I didn't want him to burn his paws on the pavement because even at 6 o'clock at night, it was still 115 heat index. And we're supposed to be hot through Thursday too, so it's going to be a fun few days. Looks like I got something over on rod 1. With the way I currently have rod 1 set up, I do have a steel leader on it, so it is very visible. So more than likely any fish we catch here on this rod will be a pike. And I have the steel leader on it in case it is a pike, so that it is less likely. It is still possible. I basically have the biggest steel leader in, so it's less likely for the pike to bite the lure off. All of my fluorocarbon leaders right now are actually very, very big diameter fluorocarbon, but the swivels and hooks are smaller. So this is very thick fluorocarbon, but it has 9 kilogram hooks or hooks and swivels, so that if something's going to break, the hooks and swivels break. But because it's very thick fluorocarbon, it's harder again for the pike to bite through it. Fluorocarbon is the least visible to fish in the water. It is basically invisible. Then you go to monofilament. Most people, it depends on how you look at it. So monofilament is what a lot of the actual devs recommend using. I tend to use braided line, but if you read, I think it's Levo, if I remember correctly, put a great explanation of how he sets they set the rods up, and they're one of the devs. And monofilament is kind of the middle ground as far as thickness goes. It does the least wear and tear to your rod, and it's kind of the middle ground as far as visibility goes as well too. Braided is the thinnest line, so you can get the most of it on a spool, but it's also the second, or it's the most visible of the 3 lines. Fluorocarbon is the thickest, but it's also the least visible. So that's why most people will use fluorocarbon, especially for spin fishing. Most people will use fluorocarbon on their leader and either braided or mono on the actual line in the reel. I tend to use braided personally, but that also wears more into your line guides than monofilament. And the more your line guides are wore out, the more wear that happens to your line. The more wear that happens to your line, the less capacity it is. So this line is 3.8% less capacity than 10 kilograms. So it's basically 0.3 kilograms less capacity. And that calculation goes the same for your mechanism. So my mechanism on this rod, or this reel actually, is 20% worn. So it's 20% less capacity. The friction brake is also about 17%. So 17% of 8 kilograms. So it's basically a 7 kilogram reel right now. There's a lot of debate around when you should repair your reels. I've always been around the 25%. Levo's closer to 50, but usually by 50, I'm so worn out of dealing with fish that I want to repair it. Your mechanism is a hidden weight, so the Mosquito, I don't actually know what the mechanism is. There is a couple different spreadsheets out there, so if you look in the description, there's rf4.fish. That is a good spreadsheet. that links to a lot of the other ones. Kilted Jock, who's another streamer, also has a good spreadsheet. I did not lock this reel, and there's a fish on it, and who knows how long it's been on it. And where it is. So I'm going to go ahead and turn. Dang it, I'm an idiot. I noticed the line was kind of hanging weird. And this fish is a good ways back. It's reasonable. It's not amazing. But we'll go chase it. I noticed it was hanging weird, and that's what gave me an idea that I might not have locked it. I don't like that you can't really see line coming out easily as you would in real life. Let's go ahead and turn. I'm actually going to go back through that since I had this fish on the whole time and had no clue. It's a reasonable pike. 1.5, 1.352. So I think I was talking your mech weight. Your mech weight is a hidden deal, and there's a couple different spreadsheets out there. There's rf4.fish, which links to a lot of them, and I think might have some of it in it too. But Kilted Jock has a spreadsheet that I use quite a bit as well too, that has a lot of the hidden mech weights in it. So like I'm pretty sure the Caliber HSV has, I want to say it's a 31 kilogram mechanism. And what that means is that's a maximum weight. So if you lock the reel, so if you turn the friction brake all the way up and lock it where it's infinity, you can break the mechanism if the fish is pulling more than 31 kilograms or whatever the mechanism weight is. And like the friction brake, the more worn the mechanism is, the less capacity it has. So if you have a 10% worn 31 kilogram mechanism, it's really a 28 kilogram, a little bit less than 28 kilogram friction brake or mechanism. Same thing goes for the blank on your rod. The more worn out that is, the less capacity the rod has. I always thought the line guides played the same in that calculation. They do not. The more worn out they are, the more wear they do to your line. The more line wear you have, the less capacity of your line. That's a lot of talking for me. But had some questions. For carp fishing, I guess, for leaders, doesn't really apply to this character, more to my float character, or if you're feeder fishing as well too. Carp don't really care about leaders. Most people will use either braided or monofilament leaders there. They don't, they're not as cautious. They're bottom feeders. They're used to eating crap off the ground. So they're used to seeing random stuff. Whereas spinfish, a lot of times, are predators, so they're very careful. They want to see a fish and they want to attack the fish. They don't want to see something around the fish. That's why fluorocarbon leaders are very common with spin fishing. And feel free to add any comments below. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm okay with that. But that's how I've always played the game, how I've heard it. And look up Levo's guides. They have made some great guides. That's Levo, Lima Echo Victor Oscar, Levo. So it is getting to be nighttime. I'm thinking I may park the boat for the night. See if we get anything. Did I forget to close that reel again? No, I closed it. With it head banging like that, I definitely closed it. Just the way things have been going today, I figured I hadn't closed it. So I'll go ahead and cut through the channel here one last time, then park the boat for the night. I may do some jigging overnight, but I don't expect to catch anything, so I may just let the night go. I'll keep recording I'll pause the recording. If I hook something, I'll come back to it. But I think that's going to be what happens. I think I'm going to go jigging at night. Jigging here can be a little bit risky because of catfish. I don't think there's anything else super big here. But even going for burbot, you can get a 13 kilo burbot, or you can get a, where'd to go, 99 kilo catfish. Looks like burbots have mainly been on bottom fishing too. I was just seeing if there was anything else. Xander, usually the white lures, the white maggot tails don't attract too many catfish, so you're safer there. It was weird. I just heard a splash. I don't know why. Usually I only hear that if there's a fish on and it jumps. Maybe I drug rod 2 up on land and then back on into the water. That's the only other thing I can think of. But yeah, I think I am going to go catfish fishing. Or not catfish fishing. Hopefully not catfish fishing. I think I'm going to go jigging, hopefully for Xanders. I like to do that facing over in that direction from the shore, kind of around those purple flowers. Or on the side of these reeds here, but a lot of times I'll park my boat here. And I don't like leaving a rod in the boat. You should be safe to do it. I just don't like to do so. I'll change this to jigging. Put this jig head on. And I do have a white maggot. Good. Make sure I don't have a line clip on here. And let's go over by the purple flowers. And just yeet it out as far as we can. Give it a second to sink. Then do 2 spins. I'm at a 50 retrieval speed. Wait a couple seconds. 2 more spins. And there's jig step right above the tension bar on the bottom left there. And that gives you a bonus to fish attraction. So I'll continue this through the night. If I hook something, I'll be back. Otherwise, well, I hook something. Small fish. Very small. Little baby burbot. So I'll go ahead and cast out here. If I hook something decent, we'll be back. If I get another small burbot like that, I probably won't. We'll be back when the sun comes up. All right, we are back. I did make 1 change to the setup. Actually, 2 changes to the setup overnight. So you may have remembered I had the Corellia here on rod 1. I realized I was doing something dumb when I started looking at things overnight or thinking about things overnight. The Corellia is a 15 kilo rod, and I had this 22 kilogram steel leader on it. So my weakest point was really my line, which is not the best thing to do. So I did switch that back over to the Model 1 since I am trolling. I also did buy a 15 kilogram steel leader. And then you may notice that this rod is no longer using the snatcher. I went ahead and bought another X crank or F crank for this rod as well too, as well as another 22 kilogram steel leader. The difference between the two right now is rod 1 has the X crank, F crank, whichever it is. I'll look it up here in a second. The X crank F60. Neither is an F and an X in there. This rod has size 1/0 hooks on it. This rod has the default size 2 hooks on it. I'm just curious if there's a difference. I may get more fish on this rod, but they may not be as big. We'll see. But since I'm targeting pike, and pike seem to be very much favoring that X crank F60-02, I figured I might as well buy another one. It's only 45 silver, I think, so not too bad. And hopefully today will easily cover the cost of that lure. I'm not going to lie, I cheated. I did take a quick look at the amount of fish caught, and the price, unfortunately, was only about 20 bucks. So nothing super major. You also did not miss any other fish. Overnight, I cast out another 3 or 4 times and got nothing. And then I took a quick look at the tackle store that is on the island. Not many people know there is a tackle store on the island, or think there is. They did not have the X crank, so I did take the ferry back to. That's a nice salmon. That's a surprise salmon. I'll take that though. I took the ferry back to the mainland and hopped into the tackle store to buy what I wanted there. But there's a grocery store, a fish market, and a tackle store here on the island. And I think both rods have a fish on right now. I didn't realize this friction break was at 16, so that 2.3 kilo salmon, while it's not a bad fish, it was not as good of a fish as I thought it was initially. Small pike, I don't think it's a marker. Not quite. I think this one's another small fish as well. I was right. Phone's made a lot of noise. I need to take a quick look at it. Make sure people aren't trying to get a hold of me for the 4-letter W word. I'm thinking it's just emails. Yep, that's what it looks like. Good. Fishy fish. It's still a little early. Right around now's usually when things start to pick up. Looks like we got something here. Small on 2, and maybe another small one on 1. This one might be a mark. I am holding shift. I think it's going to be a marker, but I think it's small. It's not. It is very small. 605 grams. Tiny perch. Not even worth looking at. Decent fish over here on 2. At least a marker. At least I think it is. Just barely 743. Not gonna lie, I thought 750 was a marker. I'm a little bit surprised that qualified. But I'll take it. And if you don't know what I mean by marker, markers are fish that are of a certain size. And that just means you get a much more silver, usually 6 to 20 times the amount of silver for them. I've been literally 1 gram off a marker before, and it was 20 times more silver. Most of the fish are closer to 5 to 6 times. So you'll get pennies versus dimes or dollars. Turn around here. I thought that looked like there was a fish on here. I don't think it's an amazing fish. I was right. A 100 gram pike. It's almost one you throw back. The way I see it, usually, at least here in the United States, there are size limits where a fish has to be of a certain size before you can keep it. The way I kind of see it, if they're not a marker, you're not really supposed to be keeping them. I don't know if it's the same in Europe or Russia or anything like that. Come on, big pike. Come on, big pike. I did pull up the Kilted Jock spreadsheet while I was paused, and I'm looking for the HSV, but I got a fish on. It is on the smaller rod, but I mean, this is a 9-kilo rod reel, so it's not a super small setup. I also did have the friction brake fairly low. Also something decent over on 1. Decent pike here. 1.95. And what do we have here? Probably just shy of a kilo is my guess. Just over a kilo. Right around the same here. Yeah, this one might be a little bigger. Maybe 1.25. 1.204. Is a little cool still. It's less than double digits. So pike might still be slumbering. Also 7 mile per second wind. 7 meter per second wind. I always do that. Brain always reads it as miles per second. And honestly, I think of 7 mile per hour wind, which is not horrible, but definitely noticeable. 7 meter per second, I think, is 15 to 20 ish. 8 meter per second, 17. So it's about a 15 mile per hour wind. At least according to Uncle Google. Small, big fish. I was looking for the HSV. Spinning reels. Caliber HSV is 15 kilo drag, 31.72 for the mech weight. Still ways to go there. Probably next bet would be a Tagara. Vengas, you can get a little bit bigger fish, but the gear ratio is so much higher that it takes longer to pull them in. So it's kind of the game of, do you want to be able to pull a bigger fish in on the rare occasions you catch a bigger fish? Or do you want to be able to pull smaller fish in quicker? And you tend to catch a lot more smaller fish. At least that's been my experience. And they both hold the same amount of line. And have, the Vinga has significantly bigger mech weight as well too. And all the other rods are even bigger gear ratios, so it'll take even longer to pull the smaller fish in. And gear ratio, you can see it on when you're buying a reel. You can see the gear ratio there is 5.2 to 1. And so that's, trying to remember the exact way it's always been described. But I think that means 5 full rotations of the handle is one rotation of the handle is 5 rotations of the actual reel. So if you watch how quick, let's just slow things way down. If you watch as I rotate, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So one rotation of the handle here is 5 rotations of the reel. Go ahead and just recast this. So it is kind of interesting. I always thought the quicker you can rotate the handle, the better, or the less you rotate the handle, the higher the gear ratio, the better it would be. But it seems like it's the other way around, if I remember correctly. I'd have to look it up again. Feel free to let me know your thoughts below there too if you've got experience. I've actually never used the Tagara. The HSVs were the max I really got to on my Steam character. I probably should have gotten 2 Tagaras, but I messed around with a bunch of different reels and rods and things like that I shouldn't have. So I lost a lot of silver. Not lost, but I spent a lot of silver. Decent little pike here. Over a kilo, I think. Or not, 7.95. At least it's a marker. And again, markers for me, flag tagged. Everyone, a lot of people call them different things. It says green check marks. This means the fish are of a certain size and therefore worth a lot more. All right, we're coming up on 40 minutes. I've only got 29 fish. Not horrible. For me, it's been longer. It's been closer to 54 minutes of fishing as I pause through the night. I do have time to keep going before it gets too late. So it's about 8:30 on a Sunday evening for me. And I usually like to be done before 9 because YouTube takes between 2 and 2.5 hours typically to process an hour-long video to HD. And if I upload it at 9, it'll be uploaded by 9:15 at the latest. Usually to be uploaded 30 minutes after I finish. I've got fiber internet, and these are about 5 gig files, so it doesn't take long at all. Usually it takes me about as long to put a title on it, put a quick description in, as it does to actually upload it. I actually need to do the playlist review and see how bad my episode numbers are. I always forget to change episode numbers, and I bet I'm probably 10 episodes further along than I'm showing. On both characters, to be honest. I know they're supposed to be about 10 episodes different. The float character should be 10 episodes further along than this character. I really wasn't planning on having two characters when I first started recording videos. I was going to be focused on float, and then they did a big update where they removed the tutorial lakes and things like that, and I figured I might as well jump on it. And especially if you watch my float character, they always when they did the spin training tutorial on the old way of things, they'd send you over to winding, and everyone always said you're guaranteed to catch a fish on your first cast. And I think I fished for a half an hour or 45 minutes without getting a single bite because it was bad weather. So I think I even have my first float episode is actually episode 0 because of that. Because I expected it to be 5 to 10 minutes of tutorial, and it turned out to be an hour of tutorial. Come on, fish. I'm getting frustrated. Surprised the mic picked that up. I was grabbing a soda, and I set the 6-pack of soda, and it had the little plastic ring thing on it. I sat that down on a paper plate, and evidently the mic picked that sound up, so apologies. And I'm definitely glad I muted when I opened the soda there, because I had my hand right on the opening, and it sounded like someone ripped a nice fart as the carbonations snuck past my hand. 258-gram perch. Nothing special there. Come on, pike. Maybe I should have gone to Old Burke. Come on, fish. think I'm going to do another pass along the outside of the island through the weeds there and see if we get anything. It's because there's 2 passes with nothing amazing. Really haven't gotten anything amazing today, except for the salmon, which that was a fluke. It was a salmon on a steel leader, I just realized too. That was really rare. That's fun. I just saw on the news that on top of the hurricane hitting the California area, I also just had an earthquake as well too earlier today. So that ain't fun. Tiny Vindus. Come on, fish. That's what I want to hear. That's a really good fish. It's not a fish, it's a freaking ghost snag. I just noticed there's no fish symbol above the tension bar, so this is snagged on something. This isn't an actual fish. Oh, that's frustrating. We'll turn around, and I forgot to put the boat in troll mode after turning around there. Speaking of getting trolled. We'll turn around and see if we can free it, and if we can't, we're going to be done. Yep, we're going to be done. We'll just beach the boat here. I'll leave that rod. I'll reel this one in. It's not worth logging out and back in when we're already 45 minutes in. So, seriously, game, you're going to do this. Get me off the boat. I'm not going to break and lose equipment because of that. That's crap. So, we'll run back over here, hop the ferry back to shore. At least we can do that and still get back. So, you don't know there is a ferry here that will take you back to shore. Take a quick look at the fish market. Only 60 silver. Still a 2 silver per fish, so not horrible, but and nothing for the cafe. So that's what we're going to end up with. Not the best day. We did cover our expenses on the lure and the 3-day boat ticket, though. So I'm all right with that. But we'll be back again tomorrow over on the float character, and we'll see you then. Bye bye now.